The regular session of the Senate will come to order. We're on the first order of business, the call of the roll. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Beal.
Tonight is unanimous consent that Senate Joint Resolution 69 relating to the life and public service of Ted Kanavas be taken up at this time.
Without objection, so ordered. I will ask the Sergeant at Arms to escort the family on the Senate floor. Being a former member, the clerk will read the resolution in its entirety.
Senate Joint Resolution 69 by Senator Kaplinger and others, relating to honoring the life and public service of Theodore Ted Kanavas. Whereas Theodore Ted Kanavas, a dedicated public servant, business champion, community leader, and loving husband and father, passed away on July 3, 2017. And whereas Ted was born to Nick and Minerva Kanavas on April 29, 1961, and raised in Brookfield, Wisconsin. And whereas Ted received a bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Wisconsin-Madison in 1983 and began his professional career in the software industry. And whereas Ted got his start in politics working as an aide to Wisconsin Congressman Jim Sensenbrenner of Menominee Falls. And whereas Ted was elected to the Wisconsin State Senate in 2001 and proudly represented the people of the 33rd Senate District for 10 years. And whereas during his time in the Senate, Ted was a champion of economic development legislation and authored the Angel Investment Tax Credit Act, which gives tax credits to those who invest in startup companies. And whereas, as a senator, Ted remained active in the private sector, where he served as Vice President of Business Development for Wisconsin-based software company for over 20 years. And whereas in 2014, Ted co-founded Michael Best Strategies, a government relations and public policy firm. And whereas throughout his life, Ted was deeply involved in his community. He served on the Elmbrook School Board from 1999 to 2002, coached Bulldogs baseball, and attended Annunciation Greek Orthodox Church, among several other activities. And whereas Ted was a natural leader who found immense joy in helping others achieve their dreams. And whereas throughout his career, Ted brought energy, vision, and creativity to every challenge or public policy problem he faced. Now therefore, be it resolved by the Senate, the Assembly concurring, that the members of the Wisconsin State Legislature join in honoring the life and public service of Ted Kanavas and extend their condolences to his family and friends. And be it further resolved that the Senate Chief Clerk shall provide a copy of this resolution to Mary Kanavas, Ted's wife of 25 years, and to his children Kelly, Nick, and Kate.
Senator from the 5th.
Consent that all members of the Senate be made co-authors of the resolution.
Without objection, Senator from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I think I've known Senator Kanavas longer than anyone in this room, including the senator from the 27th, Senator Risser. Our parents were elders in the Greek Orthodox Church together. We were the second generation. We lived a half a mile away from each other. We went to grade school together, middle school together, and high school together. And now our children are friends, 3 generations of a big fat Greek family. I am so excited to see all of you there today to surround Mary with the love and support that she needs, that Ted would want. Ted helped me on my first race for the state assembly. He helped me on my race for the state senate, and none of you will be surprised that up until a week before he passed away. He was helping me on my run for the U.S. Senate. From the hospital, he was texting me. Didn't want me to know that he was in the hospital. He was supposed to meet with me a week before, and he was still texting me. I couldn't get mad at him once I found out he was in the hospital, and he knew that. I was always his little sister, even though he was 2 years younger than me, and it really bugged him when people found that out. Wait, what? She really is older than you, and you're younger? And because he treated me like his little sister, and it is sort of a Greek family thing, I think that's why he even tried to protect me from understanding the depth of his illness. Every time I talked to Ted, and many of you knew this, how you doing, Ted? I'm fine. Everything's okay. Now, I'm a nurse, and nurses like to know details, and I tried really hard to get those details out of him. And I finally stopped, because I realized that this was Ted's way of fighting the cancer that was in his body. And he wanted so badly to continue to see his children achieve things, goals that they had. And you know what? He lived a heck of a lot longer than anyone gave him. 6 months? But he hung on for 2 years. And he did that for his family. He loved family, he loved church, he loved God, and he loved service. And they all went together to him. There was no separation. Always the prankster, always the jokester, and he had a nickname for everyone. He gave my son the name Pregame once, because he loved the kids. When the kids were gone away at college, out of town, he'd always, how's Nick doing? How's Elena doing? He gave my son the name Nickname when he found out that my son had been dating a girl in college, and they broke up, and the very next person that this girl went out with, she ended up marrying. And he said, how's he doing? I go, well, he's a little upset about it. He goes, well, just call him Pregame from now on. He's Pregame. That was Ted. He had a nickname for everyone. My favorite Ted story, though, was when I came here as a freshman legislator, and it was Governor Doyle's first State of the State. And there was a reception, as there always is a reception, at the governor's residence. And that year we had a large number of freshmen, and the freshmen didn't get invited for some reason. And Ted said, well, you're staying over, and you're going to the reception. And I said, but I'm not on the list. You know, they're going to get there, they roll up the gates, and he goes, don't worry, I got it handled. Pile in the car. I'm in the passenger side. Senator Welch is in the back. We roll up to those gates. Ted rolls down the window. Guy's there with the clipboard, Capitol Police. And Ted says, who's here? He goes, Senators Kanavas, Welch, and Ellis. I'm like, keeping my head down. Guy opens the gates, we go through, and I'm like, Ted, what if Ellis shows up? He's not coming to this thing. He never comes to these things. That was Ted, always the jokester. The best advice that he ever gave me was when he said, develop personal relationships with your colleagues, and to never let politics get in the way of your friendships. And I think that we're going to hear today from people on both sides of the aisle how true he lived that. And I'd like to think that in my time here, I followed through on that advice, and most freshman legislators have heard me give that advice because I feel it's so important to pass that on. And I know that I have those friendships with my friends in the inner ring and, of course, in the outer ring. And that's because Ted was so, that was so important to him. Senator Teston, Senator, I'm getting so personal here. Senator from the 24th has already heard that advice from me, and I think he's already following through on it. And this is how we let Ted's legacy continue, by remembering that advice. And in Greek, we have an expression, Eoniainimi. It's beautiful. It means may his memory be eternal. We can make his memory eternal by following through on his advice. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I like that sound, Senator from the 33rd, and it's an honor to kind of follow up with Teddy. He was actually one of the first people I talked to, too, when I started looking at running for office. I was pointed to him by several people, and I unfortunately don't have the Greek connection because I'm Dutch, so I'm known for being cheap. Greeks are known for food and all that good stuff. But we have a lot of common things, and that is I'm in the software business. Teddy was in the software business, senator from the 33rd. My wife is a Brookfield East grad. I don't hold that against her or Teddy. Yeah, I did not go to Central. I'm not going to say where I went. What I loved about him though was number one, God, he was smooth. I always aspired. He's just so smooth with his words. He's so good as he speaks, and he's known for nicknames. And I'm not going to talk a lot more, but if I could give him a nickname, especially towards the end, it's maximum impact. And I think it's just a great example for all of us. And you know, we've been privileged with being put into a position of, I'll say, authority. And we're elected here. It's not us, but it's the position we represent. I think if you look at how Teddy used that, he maximized the impact of the position that I think God allowed him to sit in for a while. So I just aspire to that, and thank you all for coming today and for sharing him with us for many years.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 27th.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's interesting that the senator from the 33rd and the senator from the 5th talked to Ted about getting into office, and my first conversation with Ted was him trying to talk me out of office. So I was Ted's token Democratic friend. He could haul me out anywhere and say, "Look, this is Urban Boxy. I'm bipartisan." That was the way Ted would operate. Some of you know this, but many of you probably don't. Ted and I had an extremely unique relationship, and it was all built on music. And the fact that no matter what was going on here, we knew that if Springsteen was in Milwaukee, that we would see each other usually in the pit at the Bradley Center. And that's when I first met Mary, I believe. And Ted and I enjoyed a unique time and a unique bond at those concerts, simply because I'd like to think I understood the music more than he did, because I'm a Democrat and he's not. But the songs affected us in different ways. He was married to a Mary, which is, if you follow Springsteen, very prominent in a lot of Springsteen songs. I knew a Mary, so right there we had this connection of what's good about us. But we did talk that if ever the state senate at the time had an opportunity to just go to a show together, we'd understand each other a little bit better. And Fred, the senator from the 26th, being probably the wealthiest member of the Senate, certainly would buy all of us drinks at the shows. Because I don't know if you've ever been to a concert at the Bradley Center, but the drinks are not cheap. So Ted and I would get one and we'd split it, just because we'd save money. But in the end, I'm the fortunate one because I got to know him. It's not because he got to know me. He took the time to reach across the aisle when he didn't have to. He would point out to us when we were right as Democrats and when we were wrong as Democrats. And having gone to Madison, I'm really surprised he didn't learn more, and more of Madison didn't actually rub off on him. I'm actually, as a Republican, I'm surprised he passed. But anyways, yeah, I know he's watching. That being said, I want to go back to the first time that I met his wife, and it was at a show. And they both had this giddy look in their face, like they get to check out of their lives for Springsteen show, about 3.5 hours, nonstop. It's awesome. Wirch has seen it. Senator from the 23rd has seen it. And they were two kids holding hands, having a good time, and singing along. So I'm going to conclude this by what I would suspect Ted would be singing to Mary at a show during a particular song, and Mary will get this. When I say, "Mary, climb on in. It's a town full of losers. We're pulling out of here to win."
Chair recognizes Senator from the 22nd.
I had seats at the Springsteen concert So I was looking down at these two senators dancing like they were possessed. It was a great time. I served with Ted. Ted was fun. We could always talk. He had that twinkle in his eye, and he knew public service was important, more important than ideology. So I will miss him. He was just a great person.
Senator from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was privileged to be able to work with Ted in 2001 on an effort that had some national coverage of something called the New Patriotism Project, which was to bring voters, citizens, and the press to a higher level of public participation and understanding. But Ted wanted to bring that to the legislature, to expand in the way that we conduct business here in the legislature in a way that was respectful for the people that sent us here and respectful to our colleagues. He was a senator in the state Senate. I was a state representative in the Assembly. Republican and Democrat, we enlisted former governors Earl and Dreyfus in the effort. And the thing that has always appealed to me and has stuck with me is because of that, there were a number of legislators who recognizes that we need to raise to that standard. And I hope that a fitting way to remember Ted would be, as we move forward in the years ahead, that we remember that effort that he led so eloquently.
Senator from the 8th.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Well, I stand to talk about Ted, too. My goodness, all of you standing up and talking about him and smiling at the comments shows you knew him and you loved him and you had a relationship with him. And that's what was so strong about Ted. He was all about people, as was mentioned. He was about faith, family, and service, as the senator said. And he was such a great example to all of us about how to combine being really bright, being involved in business, as well as service through the Senate, and being able to get things done in a bipartisan way. And he was really, truly an example for all of us. And quite frankly, I'm kind of nostalgic for those days when he was here and he would get everybody together and you could laugh and go out for a drink and not be so serious all the time. And if you had disagreements on the floor, you could walk away and say, let's go out for a drink, or let's talk, let's go out for lunch, because he never held grudges. And he was so kind and had such a great heart. And I knew him as a faith person, too, at his church. And I have a lot of friends who are Greek, so from time to time I would go to your church with George Sadis for one, or the Greek festival in the summer where everybody would turn out to have the Greek chicken and all the great food. And Ted was always there, the deal maker. Ted was a deal maker. He'd always get it done. Don't worry about it, I'll get it done. I'll get it done. Don't worry, I'll get it done. And he always did. And I really miss him terribly. My nickname was Smoothie. Not because I spoke well or got things done, but because of my golf swing. And I really wish that Ted would be with me this summer when I go out, because I haven't been playing a lot of golf, and remind me that one time I used to play with him, and whenever I was with him, I felt confident they could have a good swing, because he was always there saying, you can do it, you can do it. But Mary, I'm so glad to see you here. I'm so proud of you and how you have handled your tragedy, and how you told me that you know that Ted would want you to go on in his honor. And he's here today saying, you're awesome, Mary. You're awesome. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President and members and Mary and family, I too knew Ted, and definitely get it done is the way that Ted was, and the bipartisan piece is very real. Education, economic development, business, and he did not, and you were not his only token Democratic friend. I surely was. And I need to say that I too am very nostalgic for those days. And he and I would talk about that, as a matter of fact, quite a bit. And I appreciate what he did even after he left to help us to kind of maybe think about that in the venture that he was doing in the end. I think was very commendable. And it's sometimes very frustrating, if I could be very candid, that the days are not like that, where people would go out and, you know, spend time together. And it really, I was on the edge of that because it wasn't like it was like in the beginning. Well, not in the beginning, but I mean, but you know what I mean, a while ago. So I just wanted to rise because I would be remiss if I did not say, as somebody who is passionate about Milwaukee, Ted was passionate about trying to do things to help Milwaukee. Ted was passionate about trying to do something on education. And when I spoke about what needed to be done for small businesses, Ted was always trying to help me figure out how to do those things. So I stand today to say that I appreciated his passion. I, of course, am not Greek, but food and beverage were things that I did get to enjoy with Ted. There was some commonality there, and I enjoyed his passion and his truth that he really stood for. So thank you, Mary, for allowing us to honor him today.
Senator from the 30th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, Ted and I came in together back in 2001. Seems like a long time ago. But of all the Republicans I ever got to know, he was very special. I think the Brewers lost a great fan in Ted. It was interesting to note that you talked about the Annunciation Bulldogs, right? The Brookfield Bulldogs. Okay. You said about Annunciation Church? Okay, I'll make the connection. I coached the Annunciation Bulldogs in football back in long time ago, long time history. But you could talk to Ted. He was very understanding. He was never mean-spirited. You loved the guy because he was just really special, and he cared about everybody. So when you come in with somebody like that, 2001, it really gave you hope that we can all be together, and hopefully in the future we can do that again. But thank you for being here.
The question is adoption. Chair recognizes Senator from the 13th.
Thank you, Mr. President. My thoughts are kind of scattered, but Ted was my best friend in the legislature. Wasn't even close. And the years that we spent on the Finance Committee together, as people around here know, you don't really know somebody until you're on the Finance Committee with them. Because you spend hours and hours and hours up in that room working through things. And I've told the story before, but he and I cut a deal. He would read the papers on Tuesday and tell me what were in them, and then I would read the papers probably on Thursday of that same week. And it seemed to work for us. He'd tell me it's, 1, 2, and 3, and we just make our picks. So, probably makes the process sound a little bit weaker than it is, but that's the way it worked with Ted and I. He was at my 40th birthday party, and I quickly learned what it's like to have a ton of charisma because Mary and Ted showed up at the party. And within about 15 minutes, I noticed that all of my guests, including my own family, were over in the corner listening to Ted tell stories. And I was kind of like, hey, it's my 40th birthday party, but they didn't care. He also came to my boys' football games. He'd show up out of the blue and just sit there and watch a football game with you, which was awesome. Always blew me away. A testament to him is his staff. Some of them that are standing on the floor here today. If you could never find a better environment than to go into a Kanavas office. I'm not going to say they were always busting their tail, but they were always having a good time. I can tell you that. So I miss him a lot. The glass was always half full, if not all the way. He just was the most positive person I've ever been around. It didn't matter what was going on or if things were falling apart. If you wanted to talk to somebody that could lift you up and just tell you, listen, it's going to be all right. We're going to work through this. It was Ted Kanavas. So I'd call him all the time. We'd talk on the phone, even when he was out of the legislature. I just miss him a ton. And I'm so glad that Mary's here and that family and friends are here today. And I'm glad we could do this. So thank you for coming.
Question is adoption of Senate Joint Resolution 69. All those in favor of adoption will please rise for a moment of silence. The resolution is adopted. Thank you. Senator from the 13th.
Mr. President.